Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
Well, first, something very dramatic will happen today. And something which has never happened before in the political history of Ghana happened today at the Alisa Hotel at 4 p.m. I got an invitation, a written invitation, a couple of months ago, inviting me to the launch of a book as part of the Kennedy Japan campaign today at 4 p.m. at the Alisa Hotel. I cannot remember any time since 1992 when an aspirant for the position of presidential candidature launched a book as part of his campaign. So this is the first time it is going to happen. And I'm dying to read the book. I'm dying to know what has gone into that book and why the campaign decided that in a country with this very high level of illiteracy, launching a book was necessary at this stage. Last night, I had a call from somebody in the United States of America who claimed to be part of the Kennedy Japan campaign and actually claimed to be part of the effort to write and launch the book. And in fact, this chap insisted that I should be at Alisa Hotel, and he described what was going to happen as a carnival. I can imagine what will happen at Alisa Hotel today. Now, this chap simply said it is going to be a carnival. This will be interesting. Now, I have a lot of interest in what is going to happen from now to the date on which the New Patriotic Party would elect its presidential candidate. Simply because I have a lot of confidence in polls conducted by Global Info Analytics. In fact, over a long period of time, it has demonstrated that it is the most credible pollster. And the last report that I heard from Global Info Analytics indicated that nobody has crossed the finish line. That's very interesting. My understanding of that statement is that none of the 5 contestants can win in a first round contest. And that it does appear that there will be a runoff. Now that raises so many questions. If there's a runoff, who is going to pair with who? Is it possible that if there is a round-off, the 2 leading contenders are going to be Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and Akompreku Kennedy Japan? Is that possible? Or is it likely to be a Brian Achampong versus Bawumia contest? I don't know. But one of these scenarios will play out. Now, if it turns out to be a Bawumia versus Akompreku contest, will Brian Achampong support Akompreku or support Bawumia? That's an interesting question which needs to be answered. Because if you have a scenario where Bawumia and Akompreku are contesting, Brian Achampong becomes the kingmaker. Wherever he puts his weight will carry the day. So I'm not sure. I don't know. You understand? I think I have a very fair idea, knowing the contestants involved. And many of them have been my friends for many years and so on. I suspect very, very strongly that if there's a second round, Akompreku cannot count on my brother, what's his name? No, Japan. Koble Japan. He cannot count on Koble Japan. I'm almost certain that Kwabena Japan will put his weight, behind Dr. Bawumia. As of my friend, Dr. Educhum, I cannot read him at this stage. I'm being very honest. I cannot read him. I don't know what he's likely to do. But what is also interesting is that the polls suggest that it's a three-way race and that two of the contestants are not likely to make any substantial gains in this election. So, as it is, we are all waiting with bated breath. Now, we should not make a mistake. The New Patriotic Party today is the only party represented in Parliament beyond the governing party. And therefore, it has significance and has relevance. I think that party is dying. I believe that party has lost its values and so on. I believe that sometimes some of the leaders of the party are extremely reckless in their posturing and so on. But you cannot ignore that party. Indeed, for the next 3 years, that party will continue to play some crucial role in our politics. And it's important to recognize that and not dismiss the party offhand. Okay? Now, I also know from my experience in Ghanaian politics that really elections are not usually, in fact, most times, about choosing the program we prefer or the leadership we want. And that sometimes elections are about rejecting what we don't like. And on many occasions, I've been on the campaign trail, and people have told me that if you bring a mouse and pitch the mouse against this candidate, we'll vote for the mouse in order to register our protest. And I'm sure all of you have been on the campaign trail. You've heard that. On many occasions, we've been to communities where they have told us that they will prefer a goat as president to somebody who is contesting for the presidency. So you should bear that in mind. It is possible that people may not like a particular candidate, but because they are voting in protest, that candidate can emerge as leader. And that is why it is absolutely important for our friends in government today to be very, very careful about their posturing and what they do. Yeah. Because look, it is possible that they can do wonders, and indeed the first year has been very good, and so on. But you see, the arrogant posturing of one member of government can send you into opposition. Yeah. One wrong statement at one wrong time can send you to opposition. I know Ghana politics. The conduct of one minister, just one minister, will send you to opposition so easily. So all these ministers, okay, all these, and I have to be careful, these people who have started walking with their shoulders in the skies, they should watch it. And if they can't watch it, the president must take a stick and discipline them, sack them, before they become a problem. Because all of you know, all of us know, inside the NDC and outside the NDC, that we are beginning to see signs of arrogance among some of the leaders. You know, I mean, I was so shocked when I listened to a radio discussion. I was so very shocked when a minister told a fellow panelist, you know, that he should go back to school and learn English. What arrogance! What arrogance! You understand? And these things can destroy a government. You can reduce inflation to 5.4%. You can force the appreciation of the value of the cedi, retire energy sector debt, and so on. People will vote for this insulting minister, on the basis of this insulting minister's conduct, rather than the cedi appreciation. And it's important that they watch it. But you see, back to the New Patriotic Party. Look, I am fully convinced, not partially, fully convinced, that the New Patriotic Party we are seeing in January 2026 is not the New Patriotic Party which was launched in 1992. And I know that as a fact. Yeah. Okay? And I know that not as an outsider, but an insider. And that may shock you. Look, the very fact that the nucleus of what became the New Patriotic Party was launched on the KO Methodist Park in Kumasi by two Nkrumahs should tell you a story. Two avowed Nkrumahs launched the Dankwa Buzia Club at the KO Methodist Park in Kumasi. The event was chaired by Reverend Dr. Asante Entry. Akoto Ampao and I launched the first Dankwa Buzia Club in Kumasi. Wow. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about the commitment of those who wanted to revive that tradition? It should tell you a lot. Look, the first leader of the New Patriotic Party, presidential candidate, was Professor Albert Edward. And if you like, check. Throughout the Nkrumah period, Professor Albert Edubuahi was one of the closest friends of Mr. Kofi Bakum, Minister of Defense at Nkrumah. Closest. He was a regular visitor to Kofi Bakum's house. In spite of the apparent conflict between the UP and the CPP and so on, he managed to retain his friendship with not just Mr. Kofi Bakum, but people like Kofi Bacha and so on. Edubuahi was their close friend. I worked very closely with Professor Edubuahi. And I know that he believed in building a party which was going to unite Ghana. Not just that. Professor Albert Edubuahi also wrote eloquently about the June 4th, so-called June 4th revolution. Go and read him. His book is available. In which he accepted the principles of the so-called June 4 revolution. This is Edubuahi. Yeah. You understand? So I know Edubuahi. And I know the kind of party he wanted to help to build and lead. It was not a party which was parochial. It was a party which, in his view, would be a center party which would draw people from all political traditions and forge a national platform. That was Professor Edubuahi. Okay? Now, the second Dankwa Buzia Club was launched in Kufuor. I launched that club with Professor Edubuahi. Wow. I drove Professor Edubuahi to that launching. You understand? So I know what I'm talking about. Now, it's important also to look at President John Ajikun Kufuor and who he was. Okay? Now, President John Ajikun Kufuor actually won the 2000 elections, not purely as a candidate of the New Patriotic Party, but as a candidate of an alliance. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. An alliance, the Great Alliance. Yeah. You understand? An alliance of Dankwa Buziais and Nkrumahs. That's how he won the election. But even beyond that, in his campaign, he erected huge billboards across the country with him and Nkrumah together. If I lie, tell me.
It's true.
His message was to build a government of national unity, bringing together people from different ideological perspectives and so on. That is how Kwesi Indom became a prominent minister in the Kufuor administration. That is how one of his closest aides in the campaign was Gabi. Gabi, what is his name? This ex-soldier, Gabi. You know, Gabi was perhaps his closest. On the campaign trail, Gabi was the one who carried his funds, his money, everything. It was on Gabi. He would not eat any food that Gabi had not authorized, and so on. Gabi was in charge of the campaign. Gabi, who became the running mate to Green Street in one of the elections. This is the Gabi I'm talking about. You understand? So that was President Kufuor. Now don't forget, in 2001 when President Kufuor became president on the ticket of this alliance, one of the strongest statements he made was against going HIPIC. If you remember, he rejected HIPIC. He rejected the paradigm which was being introduced by the IMF and the World Bank, you know, and being pushed by the Western countries. Indeed, it was elements within the New Patriotic Party who forced President Kufuor to accept HIPIC reluctantly. And this is a fact. Okay? Now, even today, in spite of the fact that President Kufuor and I had our differences, we fought and so on, even today, I mean, I talk to him anytime I want to talk to him. I drive to his house anytime that I feel like sharing something with him and so on. You understand? And that spirit of building a nation on the basis of a commitment to unite all its factions and sections and so on is still a guiding principle for President Kufuor. You understand? That New Patriotic Party which was built in 1992, you can check, you can ask them both and so. People like me, like Sekou Nkrumah, like Ali Masmadi Jehuapia, like Kuku Baku and so on, who were known Nkrumahs, had access to the headquarters of the New Patriotic Party. I virtually had an office in the New Patriotic Party and so on. Is that possible today? It is not. Okay? Now, what is the New Patriotic Party that we have today? The New Patriotic Party that we have today, its construction actually began somewhere in 2008, or maybe a little earlier. That is when the construction of today's New Patriotic Party, which is different from the construction of the 1992 New Patriotic Party. You understand? Now, how was it constructed? It was around this time that violent groups were formed. Don't forget. Around this time, there was a shift from mature national political debate and a degeneration into employment of violence as a means of settling internal disputes within the New Patriotic Party. You see, when they were forming the Bolgatanga Bulldogs and the you know them, all the names and so on, you understand? The impression was given that it was to counter NDC violence. That was the impression that was given. But go back into that history. At no time did any of these violent groups attack NDC members. At no time. All those who became victims of these vigilante groups were NPP persons who disagreed with the party's choice of presidential candidature. Who did they beat? Corporate Japan. They destroyed his car. They threatened Paula Foko. You understand? Check the record. The vigilante groups were used to settle internal disputes. They were used to entrench one person as the supremo of the party. That was the beginning. That was the beginning of an era in which you had to agree or vanish. If you didn't agree, you get chalked out. And look at the numbers of people who were chalked out.
Yeah.
Sammy Crap,
Yeah.
chalked out. Nahota Makro, my friend, Corporate Japan, Paula Foko, and so many others. In fact, even those who were not officially chalked out were so intimidated that they themselves withdrew from frontline party activities. Okay? That marked the beginning of this new patriotic party which Frimpong describes as fake. And that is the origin of the problems that this party faces today. Look, I'm left in no doubt, and I have absolutely no doubt, that currently there is an attempt to reduce the new patriotic party to a Bawumia fan club.
Yeah.
It's clear. And the evidence is there. You know, there's a clear attempt to reduce it to a Bawumia fan club. Now, what is interesting is that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, who on his own is not a bad person, I think he's a harmless person, you know, and so on, was not there in 1992. He was not a member of the party. He didn't even want to be a member of the party. And indeed, there are some who suggest that his loyalty lay elsewhere. I'm not going to go into that because I don't have the full facts. But he was not there. He was not a member of the party. According to Dr. Atta Kobna Kennedy and so on, they actually had to waive some of some of the conditions to qualify him as a running mate to Nana Kufuor. If they had stuck strictly to their constitution, he would not have qualified as a running mate to Nana Kufuor. Okay? So, the people who formed the New Patriotic Party, the people who joined the New Patriotic Party in 1992, did not join the party to become fans of Bawumia.
Yeah.
They joined the party for other reasons. And some of those reasons may be ideological. Some of those reasons may be political. Some of those reasons may be whatever. But those reasons could not have included an aspiration to become part of a fan club of Bawumia.
Yeah.
And I know Dr. Frimpong very well. As a journalist, I interviewed him on many occasions with regards to the establishment of the Cardiothoracic Center in Kolebu. You understand? I was even part of a fundraising activity he organized in the Golden Tulip Hotel then, you know, for that project and so on. And I've always known him as somebody with a very deep respect for Nkrumah and what Nkrumah did.
Yeah.
Very deep respect for Nkrumah and what Nkrumah did. And I was really shocked when he finally announced that he was joining the New Patriotic Party. Because I was just wondering how he fitted into that mold and so on. But he did join, okay? So he's not one who joined first because of Dr. Bawumia or any other person. I'm sure that he reflected very deeply before he joined.
Yeah.
And he might have joined because of the positioning of people like Professor Dubois-Hini and J.A. Kufuor and others, they may have given him some hope that it was time to unite the nation and that a new platform needed to be erected and so on. Those may have been some of the things that inspired him to join the New Patriotic Party. Today, that is not the New Patriotic Party that we all knew. And Sana, I'm going to use foreign policy leanings to demonstrate what I mean. Look, until recently, we had a president who decided that in addition to being a member of the British Commonwealth, Ghana needed to join the Francophonie. Can you believe it? At the time when we were saying that, look, we have no business in the British Commonwealth. We have become an independent sovereign state. We needed to exert our sovereignty.
Yeah.
Our president, a New Patriotic Party candidate, decided that the British Commonwealth was not enough. We should join the Francophonie in addition to the British government. So as we speak, Ghana is part of the British Commonwealth and Ghana is also part of Francophonie. Can we believe it? It didn't end there. At the time of the Israeli genocide in Gaza, our president declared his unflinching support for Israel. Can you believe it? Unflinching support for Israel. Look, our president went to the United States of America. Okay. And I've seen many leaders of Ghana go to the United States of America.
Yeah.
I recall when President Nkrumah set foot on the soil of the United States of America, he was actually welcomed by President Kennedy on the tarmac.
Yeah.
On the tarmac, Kennedy left all he was doing to go and personally welcome Nkrumah on the tarmac.
Yeah.
Years later, President Kufuor goes to the United States of America and he's not in a meeting with the president. He's in a meeting with the Secretary of State and he's groveling before the Secretary of State. He's telling the Secretary of State, why? These Burkina people, they are working against your interests. Assist us to go and fight Burkina Faso on your behalf. And I'm not making this up. This was recorded.
Yeah,
this was played. Everybody saw it.
Sweet.
You understand? Now, for whatever reason, Russia and Ukraine are engaged in a fight. The president of Ghana publicly opens his mouth and says, I stand with Ukraine 100%. For what reason? And so on. Okay? So this foreign policy things illustrates a certain ideological bend.
Yeah.
They illustrate a certain attitude, you know, and so on, which also reflects on internal governance and so on. Now, do you know what is happening? What I think is happening. At the end of the month, this party would elect a flag bearer, whoever the flag bearer is, and so on. But you know, there are so many prominent people in the party, including former President Kufuor, who have said that the method which is being used is bad.
Yeah.
And it is bad because it will strengthen this notion of a fan club.
Yeah.
That whoever is elected as presidential candidate is now going to supervise the election of polling station officers, constituency officers, regional officers, and so on. And the likelihood is that whoever is elected will have his own people in all these structures. They will be loyal to him and him only, and so on. And that it is dangerous for building a broad-based democratic political party. And you all know the number of people who have come out and said, this is not correct. They have been completely ignored and they are going ahead. So just in case Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia wins this election, the New Patriotic Party would fully have been baptized as his fan club.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the party is going to be fully baptized as his fan club. And that is the danger that people like Professor Frimpong, Dr. Kennedy, Kwame Pianin, all of them, these are the dangers they see. And this is why they are sounding the warning that we should be careful and so on. The other thing that worries me is the fact that today, my brother, you here, you're a member of the New Patriotic Party, you are part of its communication team, and you are actually part of the Kennedy Akumpreko campaign. You understand? But something betides you. What betides you? If you open your mouth and make a very critical statement against Dr. Bawumia, the party machinery will come at you.
Yeah.
And if I lie, tell me, the party machinery will come at you.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you are a supporter of Bawumia, you can say anything about Kennedy Japan, nothing will happen to you. You can discombobulate Japan, nothing will happen to you. You can insult a Duchu, nothing will happen to you and so on. What does that mean? This is the greatest danger that the party faces.
Yeah.
The greatest danger that the party faces is that its structures have been have become, a Bawumia apparatus. That's the danger. Why? People say horrible things about Kennedy Japan. They are not punished. They are not called before the disciplinary committee. Nothing happens. But go and mildly criticize Bawumia and see what will happen to you.
Yeah.
You understand? So that is a real problem in the party. This is the danger the party faces. Okay? And this executive actually feels beholden, completely beholden to Bawumia. I worry for the future of the New Patriotic Party. Not because I love the party, not because I think that is the party which should govern us and so on, but the multi-party democratic dispensation can only survive and thrive if we have strong parties.
Yeah.
If we have weak parties, the whole democratic ethos that we've been trying to build is threatened.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? It's threatened.
Yeah.
And that is why I worry for the New Patriotic Party.
Yeah.
I worry for the New Patriotic Party because I worry for Ghana. You see, Master, you should also be hearing the campaign messages. Over the last 5 years, what have we been told? There's a deliberate effort to divide this country into Muslims versus Christians.
Yeah.
Northerners versus Southerners.
Yeah.
Akans versus others, and so on. This is worrying. This is the most dangerous development. Whether you love Bawumia or not, you should be worried about this trend of dividing this country along religious lines. It's a very dangerous trend.
Yeah.
Whether you love Bawumia or not, you should be worried about the tendency to divide the North against the South.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous trend. No matter what your attitude is to Bawumia, you should be very, very deeply worried about a deliberate attempt to deepen the perception that Ashanti is for one political party or that the Volta region is for one political party. These are dangerous signals for our democracy and our development. Okay. Now, what are my hopes? I don't have a lot of hopes. 2 weeks to this election, how can I have a lot of hopes? I don't have a lot of hopes, but I do have some expectation. They will go to this election, they will elect a flag bearer, and if the current trend continues, the new patriotic party will become more irrelevant in the politics of Ghana. You understand? Their numbers in parliament may reduce and not increase. They become more insignificant given the trend that I see. And that does not bode well for this country.
Yeah.
Especially as at now, I do not see the so-called smaller parties gathering strength. Yeah. They are not doing anything to convince anybody that they are going to gather strength and become forces to reckon with. And that is very troubling. Yeah. It is not something that we should be happy about. Indeed, it is not something that even the National Democratic Congress itself should be happy about. If the National Democratic Congress is truly committed to building a democratic country in which all views are respected and so on, this trend is very worrying for all of us, including the National Democratic Congress. Of course, I share the view that the NDC as a party is behaving very responsibly now. You know, the NDC is not tied to the apron strings of government. And on occasion has come out publicly to disagree with government and to say, you cannot do this. This is not what we campaign for and so on. That is healthy. And I hope that it continues. But ultimately, a political force needs to emerge in Ghana, which rejects the paradigm, the national paradigm we have been following since 1966, because that is responsible for where we are. Yeah. You take the first year of the NDC, all kinds of people are praising the government. Praise is due, okay, for reducing inflation substantially, for stabilizing the national currency, for paying the energy debt, for reducing the number of public appointees and so on. All of this is true, correct, and so on. But there's been no paradigm shift in the management of the national economy. Okay? There's been no paradigm shift. I want to see a situation where some political forces would emerge which would insist on a substantial paradigm shift. Because this paradigm we are following, the neoliberal order, would lead us to nowhere. Only disaster is what we face us in the final analysis.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course, this week, one of the biggest discussions has been about whether or not some of these improvements we are seeing in the macroeconomy are inflecting the micro. And one of the places that we're discussing is the place of transport. Then it came back to the matter of the track we are on and what the effect of that track is. Anyway, we have to move on to the discussion. The last two discussions.
Dedi kama mamena PENDREAM TV ase. Na so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.